And now we have Chimchar. This adorable little fire-tailed chimp was a favorite of many a trainer who set foot in the Sinnoh region. There was just something tremendously exciting about setting off into the world of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum with your Chimchar alongside. It also had quite an arc in the anime. It originally appeared under the cruel ownership of the competitive trainer stand-in character Paul, who eventually released it. Chimchar then joined the much more encouraging atmosphere of Ash's team, and wouldn't you know it, it became one of Ash's strongest Pokemon after evolving into Monferno and Infernape. Today we're going to examine how Chimchar performed in the competitive scene. Not that it really matters, of course, since at the end of the day, anyone lucky enough to be in the company of Chimchar is probably going to be happy no matter what, but regardless, it's interesting, and so we delve in. So we ask, how good was Chimchar actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. Little Cup's debut competitive metagame bore one striking similarity to the level 100 tiers of its generation. A defined lead metagame that centered around Stealth Rock, using it, preventing it, and punishing its use, with focus sashes aplenty. Chimchar was a crucial part of this lead metagame. Indeed, it almost seemed designed for it, as it possessed some sort of valuable trait for every aspect. Pardon the pun, but Chimchar was able to ape the lead set its evolution Infernape used in OU to similarly effective result. It packed Fake Out to destroy focus sashes. It was one of the most reliable Stealth Rock setters. Its hard-hitting Overheat ensured that it could punish faster Stealth Rock from Gligar, and the move also had great synergy with Chimchar's own Focus Sash and Blaze ability. Chimchar was consistently able to get its team off to a good start with this flexible blend of sash breaking, rocks, and attacking power, ensuring it had a good matchup spread. At best, it would chase out a Snover or Bronzor lead, getting rocks up as they switch. None of its other matchups were quite as consistently good, but the thing was, none of them were bad. Pretty much all of them saw Chimchar still doing something immensely useful. This is what made it so reliable. The only matchup Chimchar really had to run away from was Meowth and its faster Fake Out. At first, this was a significant flaw, as Meowth was at one point considered the best lead in Little Cup, but the metagame eventually adapted against it so much that Meowth more or less stopped being used at all. Among these adaptations was an influx of Bronzor leads and Protect on Focus Sash Pokemon to block Fake Out. Of course, Chimchar handled Bronzor just fine. That was one of its favorite matchups. After all, it was indirectly buffed by this shift. But wouldn't the Protect boom hurt its own Fake Out antics? Not at all. It could take advantage of Protect with the completely free Stealth Rock. Plus, since most leads weren't keen on protecting and giving Chimchar free rock, it could go ahead and Fake Out when it needed to anyway. With Meowth eventually out of the picture, Chimchar shot up in usage, repeatedly demonstrating its reliability, as it always had something useful to play for in the opening terms of battle. Fake Out broke the sashes of opposing leads like Kabuto, Houndour, and Diglett before Chimchar set rocks up. This would set the tempo for its aggressive teammates perfectly. Alternatively, it had no problem with eschewing rocks and going for an immediate KO. Staryu and its faster Rapid Spin would prevent it from getting up rocks, but Chimchar had terrific odds of taking it out with the combination of Fake Out and Hidden Power Grass, and that was only against the rarer Oranberry set. Life Orb Staryu would take recoil and thus always be KO'd. Additionally, its team needed it to. Chimchar could play similarly against the likes of Kabuto and Diglett. Not having rocks wouldn't be great, but since the opponent would then be obligated to send in a faster Pokemon against Chimchar and KO it, lest it get up rocks, that meant the early game double down leaned in Chimchar's team's favor, as it would then have the momentum on its side. And in DPP Little Cup, easily the fastest hard-hitting metagame of all time, that was invaluable. It had flexibility in how it wanted to play too. In addition to the aforementioned dynamic against Kabuto and Diglett, Chimchar could switch things up against Machop lead. It could take the safe route of Fake Out into rocks if it feared bulky Chop that could live in Overheat, but it could also Fake Out into Overheat and grab a KO against standard Chop, or it could immediately set up rocks if it expected Chop to protect on the first turn. This perfectly illustrated Chimchar's strength. Even if those scenarios didn't go perfectly as planned, it was still accomplishing something of value, especially since it could switch out after being brought down to its sash. Even if it was relegated to nothing more than death fodder, that was still excellent in such a high-octane metagame, where having Pokemon to sacrifice was critical for the preservation of one's more crucial pieces. Its dynamic against Gligar was similar regardless of what move both it and Gligar used after the opening Fake Out, as something of value would be achieved. What made Chimchar even better was the fact that it didn't have to do everything in the lead matchup itself. It could fall back on teammates. For example, gas leads were annoying, as Chimchar had to choose between getting up rocks, then having its team face a full health Sash Ghastly, or bringing Ghastly down to the Sash and almost assuredly not getting rocks. Not the worst matchup, but far from ideal, in a nutshell anyway. If the Chimchar user covered the Ghastly matchup in the team builder, they could have their cake and eat it too. Indeed, while rarely dominating lead matchups, Chimchar pretty much always did enough to effectively facilitate its teammate. This made it an excellent, thoroughly reliable choice. It didn't really have much, if any, use outside the lead slot, but then again, that didn't stop Azel from becoming the best, most definitive lead in DPP OU. Chimchar was an integral part of the DPP Little Cup lead metagame, and by extension, the DPP Little Cup metagame as a whole, as its teammates absolutely adored the tone it set, and it set it reliably. Generation 5 would be hard-pressed to create a metagame even more hostile to Chimchar, and it wasn't the addition of Team Preview, though that certainly didn't help. No, it was the addition of Eviolite. Now, Chimchar itself wouldn't be bothered by not being able to hit opposing Pokemon that hard. Its role was to set the tempo of the battle after all. It was able to do this easily in Generation 4 since everything hits so hard and fast. However, with Eviolite becoming the item of choice on nearly every Pokemon, the pace of Little Cup play slowed to a crawl. There was just about no point in using and sacrificing a less useful Pokemon just for early Stealth Rock and momentum, when you could just as easily use a reliable rocker that also stuck around and provided utility throughout the battle. The metagame was far more conducive to the latter. This new tier was completely antithetical to how Chimchar had played in the previous generation. There was almost no focus stashes for its fake out to break, it didn't threaten much of anything defensively, it had nothing in the way of bulk or longevity in a metagame defined by both. Some players tried to make Chimchar work briefly, but they quickly abandoned the idea once they saw how ineffective it was in practice. Even aggressive offensive teams preferred Stealth Rockers that could actually threaten the opponent's team. There was little point in running a Pokemon just to be a rocks machine. This was already true enough, but when one considered how excellent and common Rapid Spin Staryu was, yeah, there was really any point in using Chimchar. And so, nobody did. With Knockoff's buff leading to an increase in popularity and thus to a slightly lower emphasis on Eviolite, did Generation 6 offer Chimchar a chance? Nope. Not only was the influx of berry juice effectively just as difficult to deal with, that wasn't even Chimchar's main problem. Sure, with monsters like the knockoff spamming Pawniard, the pace of the tier picked up again. However, Chimchar was not the right Pokemon to set the pace for its team. Against most popular dedicated leads such as Archon, Onix, and Taunt Mienfoo, it wasn't going to get rocks up at all. It was also 1 speed tie and 3 rock blast hits away from being similarly ruined by Dwebble leads. This was already a pretty terrible matchup spread for a dedicated lead, but it didn't end there. If Chimchar did run into a matchup where it managed to get Stealth Rock up, it sure wasn't going to be able to keep it up against the tier's Rapid Spinners, Drillbur, and Staryu, which were as plentiful as they were excellent by virtue of their ability to support Stealth Rock weak Pokemon like Fletchling, Ponyta, Vulpix, and Larvesta. The latter 3 being examples of fire types with actual utility, the opposite of Chimchar. The fogging variants of Archon and Vullaby were also major thorns in its side. Essentially, pretty much every team was naturally equipped to easily deal with Chimchar. One would really be hurting themselves by choosing to bring it, as it just matched up so poorly against, well, everything. As such, Chimchar was once again never used. Everything that existed in Gen 6 that made viability impossible for Chimchar came back with a vengeance in Gen 7. Onix, Staryu, and all the rest of them. As if that wasn't a resonant enough death sentence, Ultra Sun and Moon's increased distribution of the fog onto Pokemon like Snivy made completely nullifying Chimchar's presence even more of a cinch, as if it needed to be easier. And so Chimchar was, for the 3rd generation running, not used at all in Little Cup. And that's it. So how good was Chimchar actually? Well, unfortunately, not very. It had a great debut generation as one of Little Cup's most defining dedicated leads, and then the very concept of dedicated leads was challenged with Generation 5's edition of Team Preview, as that was already an issue but not an insurmountable one. No, the thing that really prevented Chimchar from finding viability was the fact that Eviolite was now everywhere, slowing the pace of the battles down, which had consequences like bringing Rapid Spinners into the equation. There was just no sense in basically throwing away a slot on a rocker that faint so early when so many teams did their best to get rid of rocks, especially when it couldn't generate enough offensive momentum for its teammates to pile on and win the game afterwards. The rise of Onix in Generation 6 and 7 really snuffed out its fire too, ensuring it couldn't even pretend to have a niche. However, all that is fine. All Chimchar really needed was to succeed in the generation it was so iconic in, and that it did. You know what else was a 1-generation wonder? Another Sinnoh Pokemon and the undisputed king of Gen 4 Little Cup, Munchlax. Not bad company at all. Chimchar really preferred just taking it easy and having fun over being hyper competitive anyway. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to Fall Swag Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Chimchar? What would you give it to have it do something against Eviolite? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. and follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.